Hello, everyone. I believe we are live. So Peter is here with me. We're going to wait a few minutes for more people to join. But one thing we like to do at the very beginning of every talk is just ask you all to confirm you're seeing us well, you're seeing the screen well, but also tell us where you're from, which company you work for, and yeah, just happy to see who's further away from everyone else today. So I guess, Peter, maybe you can start, obviously from AppAgent, but you're based in Prague, right?
Yeah, the company is based in Prague, but today I'm working from home. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks everyone for joining. I see that the number of attendees is nicely growing. And yeah, I'm Peter. I'm a marketing guy who started, its interest in marketing already when I was 19. I learned marketing communications at the university. Then I joined Leo Burnett, this big advertising agency that's operating globally for dozens of years. But in 2011, I started my own gaming studio, and more about that later today. Where are you based, Simon?
I'm actually based in Brussels. I'm originally from Paris, France, but I moved to Brussels to join AppTweak about 2 years ago. So now probably representing Belgium beer and fries. Belgian fries is very important to say here. And I can see that we also have people. So we have Prague, Barcelona, the UK, Berlin, Finland. I think I saw Sweden. Yes, Stockholm earlier. Morocco, Istanbul. So looks like we have a very diverse attendees already.
That's cool. I see some familiar names. So hello, Ryan. And yeah, it's super cool to see how global the audience is. Simon, when was the last time you were in the office?
Last time I was in the office was actually last Thursday, I think.
Not bad.
Because we're lucky enough here to be allowed to go back to the office in very small groups.
Mm-hmm.
But this still makes it possible to go back to the office about once every 2 weeks to check in with my team in person and use that time for meetings. So I think we're among the lucky ones. How's it in your situation?
Well, it's getting better. Luckily, after a long winter, there's more people coming to the office because number of cases is dropping down nicely. So it's a few people in the office, most working remotely, but we expect more people coming in the upcoming weeks. Because we are now operating from a beautiful villa with amazing garden. So there will be a barbecue very soon, and that's probably starting these more positive times again.
That sounds very nice. I think we will get started now. Probably more people will join, but there's already quite a few here, and we have a busy agenda. So we're going to get you guys through some quick commercial word about our companies. But before that, just want to insist on what we're going to be covering today and what we hope you'll discover and learn. So first thing will be what companies, what verticals are worth following, and then also what tools you can use to monitor your competitors' creatives. And finally, how to transform the data you gain into actionable insights for your own creatives. And with that, I'll get started with a quick word about AppTweak. So if you're not familiar with us, AppTweak is an ASO tool fueling growth for many very popular apps and games. And we try to always provide a lot of data, very accurate. Obviously, this is a key to our business, and also put a strong emphasis on our UI to accompany this. We're in the ASO game since 2014, so among the first ones in the game, I think. And yeah, we're growing a lot, so you have a lot of information on the screen. But one thing I will say is just that we're hiring. So if you're actually looking for a position around ASO today, don't hesitate to go check out our website and open positions there. And with that, I'll just throw it over to you, Peter, to talk about AppAgent.
Thanks a lot. I think that everyone today in mobile is hiring like crazy. So do we. AppAgent is a mobile marketing agency that helps top brands and game publishers to acquire more users and acquire them profitably. We develop functional strategies, then we design thumb-stopping creatives, and we acquire users either through like organic channels or paid channels such as Facebook, Instagram, or Google Ads. We're on the market for a while, and since 2015, we were awarded twice a marketing agency of the year. And we work with companies both from a gaming and non-gaming space, and they are based in 25 countries around the globe. So our clientele is really, from every part of the earth. And a few words about myself. I'm in mobile already 10 years. I'm celebrating the anniversary this year, and I originally started as a game producer in my own company in 2011. Before that, as I already mentioned, when we started our broadcasting, I was in advertisement business, but I wanted to do something more measurable, more tangible, and that's what motivated me to get into mobile. Simon, how about you? Who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I have to admit I don't have as many years of experience in the game as you do, but still been around since about 2016, 2017. So going well into my fourth year. I actually also started a bit around gaming before really moving to mobile. In the past, I've actually worked in growth marketing overall at Deezer. And I'm part of AppTweak since 2019. And today I'm head of ASO, so I help some of our top clients with also some advisory consultancy missions. And about that, I think otherwise, one thing that I was very happy to learn when we got started on preparing this webinar is that you're also a cycling enthusiast. So I think in your case, it's very broad. So the question was, are you more of a road guy or a mountain bike guy?
This week a road guy, but otherwise I have 4 bikes in my garage. So it's really about the weather and the mood, either for road bike or some downhill riding. So that's really different day by day. How about you, roadie or mountain biker?
Roadie for sure, but technically initially a road skater. So road cycling is more of a hobby to just enjoy more of the sunny weather we have now, and hopefully get a nice summer despite the pandemic and all the restrictions we might have.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I think we'll just give a brief overview of the agenda. So we're going to talk briefly as to why you can monitor your competitors and why you should do it, in fact. And then we'll go into 3 parts: understanding competitors, like finding out who you should monitor, then going into the details of what it is that you can actually monitor and how to do it to get nice insights, and finally kind of understanding how you can turn the data, the insights you have already, into actionable insights for your own creatives. At the same time, we are going to be running a few polls for the audience throughout the session, so keep an eye out for the poll section in the chat. There's also a question section, so if you just want to make sure we answer your question, we are actually going to keep about 15 to 20 minutes Q&A at the end for the audience, so don't hesitate to put your questions in there. The nice part is that you can upvote other people's questions as well, so we know who to answer first. And with that, I think we'll just jump right in. So first question for you, Peter, is why is it important to monitor your competitors?
Cool. Well, I think that it really makes a lot of sense to understand who is operating on the market, how they present their app or game, and what's their unique selling proposition. Because these are like slots that are already taken. And you as a marketer should understand how you should position yourself. And that could be done only if you understand the other players on the market. Then you can define your own unique position and unique perception of your product, be it a game or an app. And only then you can start like developing your own brand and let's say communication on the market. That's one thing. Second, what we will discuss a lot today is that you can really get a great head start by understanding what works for your competitors. And there are some tools, we'll showcase them today, how you can really analyze what kind of like communication works, art style is efficient. And that means that once you start designing your ads or store listing, you already base your creative strategy on some insights, some like inspiration from the market that can bring you to the uplift to better conversions much faster. The last thing I see that's very beneficial, that you really collect the inspiration. You see what the others are doing, you see what you like, what you dislike, and you can sort your thoughts in advance, and you can also compile a better brief for the creative department. So these are the main reasons I think it makes the competition research meaningful. But maybe I missed something, so feel free to add anything, Simon.
Honestly, I think you're covering it pretty well. Maybe one thing I would say is that through the 3 points you've actually mentioned, which are understanding the market, knowing what your competitors are working for, and finding out how you can take your own approach, the common element in all three is just understanding who are the users. And that's one of the important things to realize about mobile, is that it's so competitive that no matter at what stage of your app, whether you're about to release, if it's already live, if it's already booming, there's always going to be someone you can try to compare yourself to and understand how users reacted, what were users expecting at that point. So to me, monitoring competitors is about understanding who are the users and trying to make sure that you know what to tell them and how to be different from everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question that comes with that, I know we already kind of argued a little bit when we prepared the webinar, was how do you pick the relevant competitors? So what's your take? Where do you start when it comes to deciding who are the competitors for one of your clients?
We promised the audience a lot of examples today, so let's jump straight into the first one, and that's for Clash of Clans. Supercell is our client already for a while, and we were tasked to redesign the screenshots for this game. That wasn't done for a couple of years. It was quite a challenge. And when we started, we looked first at the motivators of players. And that's nicely connecting to what you just said, Simon, about understanding the audience. And in case of Clash of Clans, there are two main profiles of players. If we use Gamer Refinery's framework, it's networker and strategist. So these players are looking to either cooperate with the others or compete with the others, and they are looking to really use their skills and to be masters in defining the right strategy and adjusting the strategy. So I was looking at the top grossing and top free charts in Aptica, the tool from which I've grabbed a screenshot. What other games are fulfilling these motivators? And that doesn't have to be only a strategy game. It could be even like FIFA, for example, because you are playing with the others. It's about domination, about being the best, about the championship. So in a sense, that's addressing pretty much the same audience as Clash of Clans. Then we also looked a bit deeper on the game mechanics that are similar to Clash of Clans, and that's building, battling, and cooperation clans. So again, you have some pool of games. And the last criteria was if these competitors are testing frequently on Google Play. And we will speak how to discover this later on. But as you can see from the screenshot, there are quite some games, these orange ones, that meet the top 3 criteria. And then by green, I marked games that are also testing a lot. And these were the titles we included in our research. So that's our take. And I think that you at AppTweak have quite some data to do it maybe more sophisticated way, but also to analyze more data points. So how is your approach?
So our approach includes some of the things you already mentioned, for instance, the top charts. This is one of the elements we definitely consider when working. We also have them available in AppTweak, so it definitely helps understand in terms of category who are other players. And then we also have a look sometimes at who are other players targeting some keywords, because sometimes what you're actually targeting is more of a theme than just a category. And so that's why we have an indicator called the app power, which is basically based on the category rankings, but comparing also the weight of different categories. Mm-hmm. And it helps us compare apps or games across various categories. And once we do that, I think the other challenge is to classify competitors, because there's pretty much no limit to how many other games or other apps you can think are competitors. But the question is also going to be, who are the most threatening one? Who are the ones you want to draw inspiration from? And so with the app power, you have the example here of how we looked at Hearthstone, and we felt that Yu-Gi-Oh! Being slightly above them in terms of app power was a strong rival. You had Gwent and Legends of Runeterra, which were just behind them, so definitely also big threats. And then in terms of just fantasy-oriented games, Raid, Shadow Legends, and Mortal Kombat, definitely talking to some of the same audience, but far above Hearthstone, not exactly the same gameplay as well. So considering them more as market leaders to get inspired by, but not necessarily to focus on. And finally, you also have sometimes distant rivals. Here, one of my favorites, TCG, The Elder Scrolls Legend, who is not very active on mobile and with rather small app power as a consequence. So that's kind of where I think it's important to have an honest look also when choosing competitors. It's not only to make sure you have the usual suspects, but looking quite broadly at your market, and then also making sure you understand why you're going to be looking at someone for one specific reason.
Simon, let me ask you, you have these 4 buckets, and how many competitors are within each of those 4 categories? Like how much you are analyzing usually?
I would say it really depends, both on what is the topic, the specific topic of the analysis, and also of the game itself. I think if you pick a game that's in a very specific niche, you will have mostly 2 buckets, which are just going to be the direct competitor on the niche, and then some market leaders overall, to also get inspired by people who won't be competing straight with you. But in other cases, like I know sometimes we see games that just seem to be cloned of each other. For instance, all the narrative games right now, these episodes game, I think I've seen a screenshot of showing 5 or 6 of them in a row in the search results of the App Store, and all of them look the same. So it really depends here.
Yeah. We are using a rule of thumb at AppAgent that says that once you stop learning anything new, you should stop analyzing more apps and games. So it's usually around 8, 10, 12 competitors. Then you just see the same things all over again.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. But then I kind of want to provoke you a little and say, also, when do you think it's important not to look at your competitors? Because we're going to be talking about the lessons here. But one thing I've seen in the past, I think it was looking also, for instance, at racing games, is that sometimes you see a big trend from the market, but if you just follow those practices, you're going to end up looking like everyone else. So I kind of want to hear your take on when to be careful and not look only at your competitors.
All right. I believe that in a few slides, there's another follow-up to this Clash of Clans research where I'm deconstructing one of the competitors. So I'll speak there about it.
Sure. Then I guess we should actually just get there. One thing you asked was also about the data we have at AppTweak. And so I prepared a special something here today because we said we were going to let everyone know about what verticals I was following. And so there are two things to know here. It's first of all, there's a big difference in the amount of testing that can happen between games and app categories. Although, if you look at the comparisons, what you will see is that we have some app categories that are almost as active or sometimes even more active than games. And that was a case that was very surprising to me when extracting the data, that looking at the top 30 fitness apps in 2020, over the course of the years, they've actually made more screenshots changes on Google Play than the three different game categories I've picked here. And so obviously here, this includes A/B tests, so it does not necessarily mean changing the screenshots to 100% of users in the end. But I think it's a very important thing to consider that some categories are going to be more active than others. The other insight I can share is also that when it comes to finding who are the most active, both in testing and just in changing creatives, it's not always the very top apps in the store. Those who, if you think in terms of app power, would have an app power of between 85 to 100. And it's rather those just behind that, and the apps that have already started developing a strong brand, but are not as famous as the Facebook and Google of the world, and that will have products people don't only share or only look for in terms of, I know the brand and I won't look at anything, but that are apps that need to convince through creatives that they have a very strong product.
Yeah, the challengers are usually testing more, and you can learn more by reading their results and analyzing their successes and failures.
Absolutely. And so if you're wondering how we get the data, AppTweak is great because one of the data we get is this timeline where we just every day pull the screenshots, the video icon, all the different creatives from, I have lost count of how many apps we track today. To be honest, but I think it's over 2 million now. And what you can see with AppTweak, I know this is something that's super cool in our tool, is that not only do you see the real changes, the final changes, but you also detect the A/B tests. And so here we have the example of Puzzle Legends and how they just tested landscape screenshot versus portrait, which is actually was very interesting because I think when landscape, for instance, first became available as a format of screenshots, it was something everyone wanted to do. And recently we've seen some genres go back to the portrait format, which fits better just the UI of the game as well.
I can add an interesting insight here because Small Giant Games are also our client. And in the first screenshot, you can see this red dragon. It might be a coincidence, but one of the top performing creatives we did for them is actually starring this dragon in the ad. So there's a nice connection with this creative and this first impression frame in the store. Might be a coincidence, but maybe not.
I think it's the same dragon is also in the icon, so you might be onto something here.
Yeah. Might be. We should ask Small Giant.
The other thing we have available in AppTweak is also well, we use a Facebook ads library to compile data on what are the creatives being run by all the different apps. And so you're able to see what networks these ads are running on, what kind of creative. And one thing we'll discuss in terms of what to analyze specifically is we like to break down what are the elements also coming most often within the ads. Because here, for sure, one thing that has to be remembered is that the store is not always the first step in the user acquisition journey. And so it's also important to have something in line between what the ads your users might see at first and what they find on the store. So I think you've also worked with Facebook Ads Library, so maybe you can tell us a bit more about your experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We use like free main tools. This timeline that you have at AppTweak, that's an awesome thing for the store assets, the Facebook library, and then also Aptica, or it could be any other ad intelligence tool. And there's one super useful thing. And if we zoom in, you can see it here, where for Forge of Empires, you have this percentage, this blue bar below every ad that shows number of impressions collected for this particular ad among all the others by InnoGames in this case. And this gives you a very good indication which ads perform well and which don't. And because we had Fabian Weiske in our YouTube show called Mobile Editors, we really know that this ad where hand assemble buildings and it's awesome cinematic ad performs extremely well for this German-based publisher. So it's just confirmed here by numbers. And that's another input you should consider, analyzing what competition is doing and then what works, what don't, summarize these learnings. And I can jump straight into how to conduct this proper analysis because collecting the data is one thing. The second is to really get the insights. That's the most difficult part of the role of marketing manager. So I already mentioned when speaking about number of competitors that we usually analyze that we are looking for patterns. What's repeating? What are the things that the same publisher is using or the other competitors within the same category are using? And that can give you an indication, some hint, what really works for that particular audience that you share together. Then you should really think deeply, what's the reason behind, why this works, why InnoGames has this successful cinematic ad with, hands building the different structures. And you can maybe analyze that it's because it's super unique, it's visually appealing, it's very pleasant to watch it. It's unexpected because you don't know what happens next, because it's the game, but from a very different angle. It's simplified game experience because you are building, the cities, but in the game environment here, it's abstracted to this single building evolving with your touches. And these learnings are then something what you can really apply in your strategy. And not all apps and games are the same. And because we work, for example, for Clash of Clans, that's a game that's very rigorous about their IP, about the tone of voice. And when we analyzed competition, I have to say that most of the insights we collected weren't applicable for Clash of Clans because it was too far from their communication style. So you should really judge if this is something you might use or not, because it's not in line with your brand or the style of communication. And then, of course, challenging yourself how it can be better, what I will improve on these screenshots, how I will design this icon differently, how I will edit this ad on Facebook to make it more appealing. And that's, again, starting your thought process. That's a transition to this like creative development that follows after you jump into the production. Here's the example of how we do it in a very practical way. This was for Awaken Live by Logwood Publishing. Just 3 slides for a much longer presentation, but illustrating the main aspects of the analysis. First, some summary of the competitors in terms of numbers, downloads, revenues, whatever you consider important. Then each game here, The Sims, is deconstructed in terms of the USP, the unique selling proposition that you can see below the game title, the description, how the game is like communicated, the game itself, the core gameplay experience, and then some screenshots. That's still the easy part. What's the most important is then the main takeaways. A brief summary for your creative team where you really connect the dots, where you make this summary of what you believe are the main insights that should be used for their creative process. And we touched this, Simon, a while ago, this Clash of Clans and the selection of competitors. Here's Ebony, one of the games that's we believe addressing the same audience. And here we can see the outputs from AppTweak's timeline. We just copied it in the presentation and showcased our design team, how the testing went and what's the winning creative that's now in the store. Then we are analyzing more in detail like what things were tested and what are the outcomes. And then again, some practical learnings in the last slide that should be considered by the design team. So that's what I think is very like practical, and anyone, be it a motion designer, graphic designer, can quickly scan, and they will start with already some idea how the others are approaching this and what are the implications for our client. So I wonder how you do these things at AppTweak, because I see that you are doing this analysis as well, but maybe in a different way.
Yeah, I think we have some of the same ideas at the start. What we like to do, I think maybe something that's different, is really considering how things go in terms of tests that are applied and also not applied. Because we believe that a test that is not applied brings 2 learnings. First, the idea of someone had this, the communication that someone had this idea for a test, and also it did not work for them. So then we can look at it ourselves and say, maybe it didn't work for a competitor, but it could still work for our client. Or maybe we think if it didn't work for them, most likely it won't work for our client either. And that's definitely helping to cut through all the various ideas you might have. And otherwise, one thing we really like to do is break down the different elements that are part of a certain creative. So here you have the example of an analysis we did on homescapes. And you have this idea that, yes, we found that Cleric has been leaning heavily into the minigame aspect that has become so popular in their ads, and they actually changed their store creative to also feature that. So you still have the main character and this cartoonish look. You still have the same elements of home emergency. And you most importantly have this fake gameplay here of these elements you need to be removing to help solve the small puzzle. And so looking at this, looking at how things go, we can really understand what were the different approaches that were tried, and eventually try to get a very good insight into why something was applied or not. And I think we also have the example when it comes to doing this not just for the icon, but for the feature graphic, for instance, a creative that is sometimes underestimated on Google Play. But I think for apps, unless you have a video, obviously it's not that important. But for games, so many games have a video today that they sometimes forget. The feature graphic is the first thing people see before they see the video, because it serves as this poster frame. And so finding again that Playrix was leaning into this minigame aspect was especially important to us, because it confirmed that they were shifting their creative approach not just for one element, but for all of them. And something we found as well was that we went even further afterwards, and we tried to measure not just was this probably going to be positive for their installs, but also how people reacted, because we know they've historically been accused of running fake ads that make you feel like you're going to play certain gameplay when in fact you end up playing a match game. And this is really where we try to connect the dots, going also sometimes to reviews and ratings. And that's, to me, one thing that is important not to forget when doing the creative analysis, is really to try and measure how people respond at every step, but not to forget that you need to have an honest approach sometimes, or be prepared to face a bit of backlash from users.
I also believe that it's good to mention here that you should analyze both the store assets, but also the ads, because here it's heavily influenced by the very first touch point, which most often are Facebook ads. And then you understand the context, you understand how users are pre-qualified before they hit the store page. So that's why we are mentioning like both, let's say, placements for analysis.
Absolutely. And so I think the next thing is looking again at these differences and the insights you can take from it. So I'll let you cover this, because I think you've also studied Playrix in fact.
Yeah, it's a funny coincidence. We did the same across all the games, all the assets. Already a while ago, there were like 50 slides of analysis. And I just want to make it very practical now, and in this final part of our discussion, to show what learnings you can mine from such an analysis. So here you can see garden schemes and homescapes, different assets. And here on this slide, there's a few of the takeaways, 6 of them, which I believe could be a perfect starting point for any casual game producer. So first, most of the tests of Playrix are focusing on the first screenshot. That already gives you a good indication that you shouldn't care much about the 5th screenshot or even do more of them, because the first impression frame is what matters, and Playrix is giving you a proof here. Second, all their games are using 1 or maximum 2 word headlines in the top left corner. That's not a coincidence. They tested many different layouts, many different headlines, and if all of their games share this is obviously what works very well. Third, the icon is usually demonstrating the main character and sort of a gameplay. In a sense, it's like a condensed gameplay into this small visual asset. And I believe this is also like a great challenge for any designer to try to like squeeze the game into the icon and tell the audience this is what you can expect from the game with this small visual asset. The fourth thing is super interesting, and I believe Playrix is the company that really started this trend, and it's a strong focus on emotions. All their ads are about fear, urgency, some problem solving. And I believe that's the reason why they work so well, because people are like touched by those critical situations they can see in the ads or in the store. And you're often challenged as a viewer of the ad or visitor of the store to resolve that problem, to really help that character to solve that situation, be it a fire in the kitchen or a water in the entry hall of your mansion. And what they're also doing very well is the way how the game is simplified in those screenshots. I wouldn't call it fake because it's just simplified. It's true to the core gameplay experience. It just focusing on the main elements, and everything else is put aside. And that was exactly the approach we followed with Clash of Clans. We wanted to show everything visually, so even if we exclude any headline, it should tell the story, and it should tell it in a very straightforward way. So it was one of the leading insights we used for our design work. And that's basically also what I'm outlining in the last point here, that the game mechanic is very visually represented, and you are invited into making decisions already watching the store page, because you are asked as a viewer if you would resolve the situation with this or that choice. That's how they design their assets, and I believe it's greatly engaging, and that's why it works so well for this publisher.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a style they've I'm not sure they created it, but for sure they're the ones that made a mark with that style of just making sure you would play on a user's frustration of saying, I know I could resolve this one. So definitely a super interesting thing that we also saw when we were doing our analysis of it. But I think we need to go to the last part. We only have a few minutes left, and I want to hear about how you go to the experiment phase. Just before that, I want to remind everyone that we have polls running, and one of them is actually about how often do you run creative experiments, and so that's also one of the questions I will have for you, Peter.
Sure. So let's jump now into this, and then we can go to questions. Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So this is the way how we approach designing experiments. So once we have all these insights, let's say these 6 from the slide about playrix, then we should meet together, and I mean by together, ideally with the product manager, in our case from the client side, or if you are a publisher then from your company, designers, idea makers, and in this group, start compiling the ideas, what is worth testing based on these insights you collected before. And then the biggest question comes, what to test? And it's not that difficult. You don't have to fight with your colleagues who is right and whose opinion is not the best, because the way how we do it is rating of several criteria, be it if it's a first impression frame, if it's visible in the first 3 seconds, if it's complex to produce such an asset, if it demonstrates the app mechanic well. There are many things you can brainstorm. We have designed about 15 criteria. We rate them. It's typically 0 or 1, yes or no. And then this is calculated together into a score that gives you some indication. You can see it here next to the theme, between the theme and experiment ID. And the score gives you some indication what you should give a priority. Then, of course, it's good to revise it with your producer and revise your capacities. But for us, this is a great indicator how to organize the backlog and what should be pushed to production first and what later. So I think this is a very easy thing to copy for everyone today, and feel free to do so, because then the hassle and argumentation will be easily removed. Simon, do you have any other recommendations? Do you follow another approach than I just described?
So, I actually have the same approach to trying to prioritize based on these different elements of how complex is it going to produce, what's the expected impact. Something we also consider is always in terms of impact, how much of a difference is it from the previous versions, the version that's live on the store, and at the same time, is this going to be something that is easily noticeable? Because if you're designing an amazing, completely different 7th screenshot today, probably you're not going to have that much of an effect because not that many people go to that. One question I have for you though is, what's your approach to testing? What do you use? How often should you test runs? That's one question we were asking the audience, and I'm seeing that we have about 40% saying at least once per week, people, 30% saying at least once per month, while others share that resources are more of a challenge. So how do you approach it at AppAgent?
Well, I have maybe a bit more extreme approach to this. Every day you are not testing is a day wasted, because you can test like many things that aren't like production heavy. For example, the order of screenshots, changing the copy, things like that you can really produce in the creative department in no time. And then each experiment should be live for at least 7 days. So you include all work days and weekends as well. So that's what I would recommend to anyone having a decent traffic and paying attention to the conversion. And there's always something to test. And this backlog I'm showing here, I just did the name of the client, but it's very, very long. And if you have smart people on your team, they will come with a ton of ideas. And then you should really give some priority to those experiments by either the score, but also your production capacities that comes into play as well. But ideally, you should be testing every single day.
I completely agree. And also, I really agree about the fact that you should have a test running for at least 7 days. I know I've seen clients in the past who were ending tests after just 3 days, and then it did not always pan out in the kind of the real world, and the final result after that were not what they expected. And so that's also why when it comes specifically to Google Play experiments, we've devised a method that we call the ABB testing, which is supposed to help with making sure that you are going to have results that actually work. And that's where we just say, make sure to run this for 7 days and just duplicate your new version to make sure that when you see a difference, the difference is present in both B samples, just because then it means it's coming from what you've changed and not just from how the sampling has been done. So I'm not sure Peter is still with me. I don't know if you can hear me, Peter, but it's time for questions. So I'll just... Perfect. I think I've lost the visual on you, but it's perfect if you can hear me. So we have already 4 questions, and if there are more, please feel free to add them in the questions tab. So I'll actually start with a question from Ilya, who was asking, how can we see competitors doing Google Play experiments and which assets they're testing? So how we do it, I don't know, Peter, if you know of other tools who do it, but at AppTweak, how we do it is just that we go through store pages every day, more than once per day, and as a result, we're just able to see when there's different versions, and we're able to find where these versions are stored. So this is kind of a secret sauce at AppTweak. But we have been able to confirm what are the different variances. I don't know, Peter, if you have any other insights in terms of tools to help monitor the A/B test of competitors?
Not really, to be honest. And I was super excited when I discovered this feature of AppTweak. So yeah, if you're not using the tool, Elia, you should register. Because it's really super helpful, and I believe it can save you a ton of time.
So second question from Tim. Are portrait creators better in general, or does it depend on the game?
I can take this one.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear you about this. I might have a few more things to add, but I want to hear your take.
Well, Tim, could you imagine Clash of Clans screenshots on portrait? it will be like quite tough to squeeze things in and stay true to the game. So I think that there are cases where it doesn't make any sense to manipulate this. You should stay true to the game orientation if you're a game developer. We experimented with this quite a lot in the past for apps, because that gives you much more space for changing the layout. And it turned out to be sometimes effective, sometimes not, to be honest. For example, for Kiwi.com, one of the versions that was live for half a year, maybe a year, was landscape. Then we designed and made a complete design reset. The new set was portrait, and it outperformed the previous winner. So you should really test it out, but I don't think it's a good idea to heavily manipulate the game, because it will cost you production resources, and people expect something different. And that's not ideal, especially in idea for deprecation, when the audience would be even less qualified by the platforms.
Yeah, I agree with you here. Use the best, or at least the safest bet at first is to stay true to the gameplay and the gameplay orientation. And then sometimes you'll be able to mix things up by having a very specific design. But in most cases, it's easier to start with what your game or app orientation is, and build more hypotheses on the message itself. One question I really want to hear you, because we have a question from Alberto. How safe is it to extrapolate your A/B test results on Google Play to the Apple App Store? So is this something you do? And is this something you see working very often or not that often?
I think the audience should upvote this question more, because it's a great one. Our take on this, we test primarily on Google Play, and the winners are then like retested on the App Store using a sequential test. So we look at the results 2 weeks before the update, 2 weeks after the update, considering there's a decent traffic. So it's sort of like semi-extrapolation, because we want to make sure that it works, or at least doesn't decrease the conversion on the App Store, and that could be also the case. So it's not ideal. We would love to have this A/B testing capability also on the App Store, as everyone, I guess. But it's not just blindly copying the assets from Google Play to the App Store.
Yeah, I think on my end, most times I would expect this to work, just because brands like to have the same overall look and feel in both stores. But it can be interesting to also test various things. The biggest challenge is just that the App Store doesn't have the same kind of tool. And so you're left to just apply to 100% of your audience and see what happens as a pre-post analysis. One question from Nicole is regarding, so going back to landscape versus portrait, Nicole is asking if this also applies to store video orientation, and what would be best practices for store video?
Question for me, or would you like to reply to it?
Well, I can share for the first part, just in terms of best practice. Then you have to consider how it's going to appear in the store. So if we're talking about the Play Store, portrait orientation is going to be very rough, because you actually need a YouTube video, which is always going to appear in landscape. So for the Play Store, I would say it's always better to consider having a landscape orientation. And if you want to show gameplay, you can just have a split screen with, on the one hand, a phone where you see the game being played, and on the other, text, for instance, highlighting what is happening. So there's definitely a lot of design to do around this, and you can stay true to the UI. But remember that in the store, at least for Google Play, it will only appear in landscape. And for the App Store, here that's where it depends. So that's where I want to hear you, Peter, mostly is, do you think there's one format of video that performs better than the other when it comes to the App Store?
Well, we have tested also multiple approaches and with multiple results, of course. What I would say, like in general, that I think that if you use a portrait video in the App Store, it allows you to transfer a bigger message, a more comprehensive message to the audience using the second slot, the first screenshot and second screenshot that you can see in the search results. If you use a landscape video, the whole space that otherwise occupied by either video, screenshot, or three screenshots next to each other is then consumed by a single asset, which is the video or the video cover if people have the autoplay feature switched off. So I would start with testing like this option first, and then maybe do more bolder experiments. But ultimately, the thing you mentioned about Google Play is also influencing the decision, because not that often publishers want to produce two different versions of the video for each store separately.
So I think we have a lot more questions, so we'll try to answer as many of these before time runs out. One from Maya was about classifying competitors, so I'll start, but I'll let you add to my answer. Her question is, should you better classify in your own category, for instance, casino games, or other different categories as well? And I'd say here, it's really going to depend on your game. If you're going for a certain theme more than a specific gameplay, that's usually where I would say you should look at different categories. When you're looking at a specific gameplay, well, technically there is still the question of make sure that you're in the same category as competitors who share the same gameplay. I think for casino games, almost everyone is in the same category, but looking at more diverse categories such as casual or simulation, you definitely need to cut through the noise to find the actual competitors who you can get inspired from.
So my approach would be to invest 70% of the effort into my own category competitors, and 30% to explore the approaches from broader spectrum, because you might miss some interesting inspiration from a completely different vertical. But for example, this casino games that Maya mentions, that's so specific vertical that in that case doesn't make sense to look anywhere around. The visual style, the color code, these things are so unique to casino genre that you wouldn't see the same approaches anywhere else. And the thing is that if you challenge these things that the others are using, you most often fail. That's our own experience. This is a category where you should stay true to the rules that the category has for quite some time.
One more question at least coming from Ibrahim. Most of my competitors are not using previews, but I am. It bugs me whether I should remove it too, since they are slightly doing better than I am in the App Store. So what's your advice here?
Well, definitely try to remove the video. It's one of the first experiments that we do. And there's two reasons. One is that it might hurt your conversion, especially if you are, for example, a utility app, and the app itself isn't that sexy. It's just a utility, and there's not much to showcase in your video. And second, if the test will prove that the video isn't improving the conversion, you will save a ton of resources. You don't have to produce it. You don't have to localize it. And that goes also to number of screenshots. If you have 8 screenshots right now, try to remove 1, 2, 3, and make your life simpler. Try to remove copy. Try to remove localized versions to see whether that's hurting or improving the conversion, because ultimately you should also keep the effectivity in mind. And video is definitely very time-consuming to produce.
Yeah, I agree with you. But to clarify maybe a bit, I would say it's very important to test, and it's a very easy test to run. But at the same time, I would say it's the fact that competitors don't have a video is not the issue in itself here. That's actually where I would say consider that if they don't have it, that's where you might want to see have they tested it, because if they have and don't have it today, then you can be almost certain that their video was not converting well, and then based on your own tests, decide of what is good for you or not. But I also agree that you have to make your life easier and consider that videos are the most costly resource in the stores. So thinking about scaling, about localization, which we haven't touched about too much today, but these are very important things. So I'll be looking if we have one final question, but otherwise I'd say also something where we haven't discussed too much about this, but is worth monitoring competitors and being careful around choosing competitors is actually about that localization aspect, because some countries, some markets are very different. So you might have competitors in some markets you don't have elsewhere. I don't know, Peter, if you also have seen this in the past.
It could be a huge opportunity because most of the companies focus obviously on English-speaking countries, and if you're the only one in search results in, let's say, Japanese on this market, then obviously this will be a huge benefit for the consumer. On the other hand, it goes back again to resources. Test if the localization matters, if it improves the conversion. If it's so, don't do it. Save your time. And also this differs quite a lot market by market. So there's like no general rule. We, for example, have seen that in Germany, it doesn't make much of a difference for some of our clients, but then in Russia, it makes a huge difference for some of our clients. So again, the mantra, keep testing, but keep in mind that the less work, the most you will save on production, and also the more experiments you can run, because you'll be able to design new tests much faster if you exclude localizations, for example, or a video.
That's a great summary, and I think we'll have to stop here for today. So thanks to everyone who attended today, and very huge thanks to you, Peter, for being here with me. Really appreciated all the talk, and really looking forward to getting to have more conversations about creatives.
Likewise, thanks, Simon, and thanks everyone for joining.
Have a good day, everyone, and we'll see you soon, I hope.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.